What would you feel if one morning you suddenly woke up and realized that your body was slowly turning as hard as stone? At first, you might think that you simply injured a bone, or maybe you exercised too much. You might assume that it is just scar tissue forming and that it will eventually heal. But this time, it was different. Very different. This is the real story of a man whose body gradually turned into a rigid structure of bone while doctors struggled to understand what was happening to him. This is the heavy and unforgettable story of Harry Eastlack. Harry Raymond Eastlack Jr. was born on November 17, 1933, in Philadelphia. At birth, there were no obvious signs that anything was wrong. The delivery was normal, and the nurses and doctors who examined the newborn found nothing unusual except one small detail. Harry's big toes were slightly malformed. At the time, this seemed like a minor physical irregularity that did not attract much attention. His parents believed that he would grow up like any other child. He played at home, ran outside, and spent time with his siblings. His life appeared completely ordinary. However, in 1937, when Harry was 5 years old, a small accident changed everything. While playing, he broke his left thigh bone. Broken bones are common among children, so his parents took him to the hospital. Doctors performed surgery to repair the fracture, placed his leg in a cast, and eventually sent him home. Normally, a broken bone heals within a few weeks or months, and children quickly return to playing and running again. But something strange happened to Harry. Shortly after returning home from the hospital, a strange swelling appeared on the front of his left thigh. Doctors examined the area carefully. At first, they suspected scar tissue from the surgery. Perhaps it was an infection. Both possibilities seemed reasonable. However, no one at that time could identify the true cause. The following year, in 1938, Harry was officially diagnosed with Fibrodysplasia Ossificans Progressiva, also known as FOP. When doctors explained this disease to his parents, the family was devastated. FOP is an extremely rare genetic disorder in which the body gradually transforms soft tissues into bone. Muscles, ligaments, and tendons slowly harden and turn into rigid skeletal structures. Every injury, every bruise, and even a simple viral infection can trigger new bone formation inside the body. It is as if the body's own repair system begins working against itself. Instead of healing damaged tissue, the body creates an entirely new skeleton around the original one. At first, the symptoms progressed slowly. Harry's neck became stiff. His shoulders began to lose their mobility. Then the upper part of his back started to harden. His body seemed to be freezing in place. By 1946, Harry was 13 years old. By that time, his spine had completely fused together. His body was permanently bent forward, giving him the posture of an elderly man. The muscles in his upper back had already been replaced by bone tissue. Yet this was only the beginning. The disease would continue to spread downward through the rest of his body. As the years passed, Harry's daily life became more and more restricted. At first, he could still move his head slightly, but his torso gradually became immobile. His knees stiffened, his hips locked into place. Even simple activities such as putting on or removing clothing became extremely difficult. Every movement caused pain. A small bump, a fall, or even stepping too hard on the ground could trigger new bone growth in his muscles. Harry's parents, doctors, and nurses had to be extremely careful with every movement around him. They tried to avoid any unnecessary physical contact. Ironically, even attempts to improve his mobility could make the disease worse. During his teenage years, attending a regular school became impossible. Doctors visited his home. Physical therapists tried to help. Unfortunately, Many forms of physical therapy actually made the condition worse. Stretching muscles or manipulating joints often triggered new bone formation. At that time, medicine simply did not know how to treat FOP. There were antibiotics, there were medications, but nothing that could stop the disease. Doctors could only observe and wait as the condition progressed. By the mid-1950s, Harry's condition had become dramatically worse. Many people might have lost hope at that point, but Harry continued living. At home with his family, he tried to maintain a sense of normal life. He read books, listened to the radio, and spoke with visitors. His family supported him. His siblings visited him often. Life continued, although it was very different from the life most people knew. By 1958, Harry was 25 years old, and his body had become extremely rigid and immobile. Living at home was no longer practical. He required specialized medical care. As a result, he was moved to Inglis House in Philadelphia, a care facility for people with severe physical disabilities and chronic illnesses. The facility itself was not a terrible place. The staff members were kind and supportive. But for Harry, life there meant waiting. The residents were mostly elderly or permanently immobilized patients. Among them was a young man whose body had been locked inside a cage of bone. His 20s passed there, then his 30s. His youth slipped away inside that building. As the 1960s and 1970s passed, Harry's body continued to stiffen. Only small parts of his body could still move. Perhaps his eyes could turn slightly. Perhaps his mouth could move. But his shoulders, arms, legs, and hips were completely locked in place. His body had essentially become a statue. Despite everything, Harry made a decision that would eventually help the scientific world. He wanted his condition to contribute to medical research. If doctors could study his body after his death, perhaps they might understand the disease better and eventually help future patients. Before he died, Harry chose to donate his body to science. His physician, Dr. Frederick Kaplan, supported this decision. On November 11, 1973, Harry Eastlack died. Pneumonia had developed. Because the disease had fused his ribcage into a rigid structure, his lungs could not expand properly. His body was no longer able to take in enough oxygen. Just 6 days before his 40th birthday, his life came to an end. Yet Harry's story did not end with his death. When doctors studied his body, they discovered something extraordinary. Harry's skeleton revealed two structures: the natural skeleton he had been born with and the second skeleton created by the disease. This unique condition provided researchers with invaluable information. Since 1979, Harry Eastlack's skeleton has been displayed at the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia, a medical museum known for preserving unusual anatomical specimens. Medical students, professors, and researchers have studied his skeleton in order to understand the mechanisms behind FOP. Much of what is known today about the disease has been learned through the study of Harry's remains. In 1995, a conference about FOP was held at the Mutter Museum. Among the attendees was a woman named Carol Orzel, who also suffered from FOP. Her life had been remarkably similar to Harry's. She lived at the same care facility, Inglis House, and was treated by the same physician. However, she had never met Harry while he was alive. Instead, she encountered his story after his death. Seeing Harry's skeleton deeply affected her. Inspired by his contribution to science, Carol decided that after her own death, she wanted her skeleton to be donated to the museum as well. In 2019, Carol Orzel passed away. Today, the skeletons of Harry Eastlack and Carol Orzel stand side by side at the Mutter Museum. Although they never met in life, they now remain together in death, symbolizing a unique connection between two people who shared the same rare disease. Fibrodysplasia. Ossificans Progressiva is one of the rarest genetic disorders in the world. It affects approximately 1 person in 2 million. Only about 900 cases have been documented. The disease is extremely difficult to diagnose in its early stages because the first visible sign is often only the malformed big toe. Many patients are misdiagnosed or diagnosed too late. The disease is also fatal. The average life expectancy is around 56 years, though many patients die between their 40s and 50s. The most common cause of death is respiratory failure caused by the stiffening of the rib cage. In Harry's case, that is exactly what happened. His chest had become completely locked by bone, making breathing increasingly difficult until his body could no longer survive. In 2006, scientists finally discovered the genetic mutation responsible for FOP. The mutation occurs in a gene known as ACVR1. Despite this discovery, there is still no cure. Researchers continue to search for treatments that could slow or stop the progression of the disease. Harry Eastlack's story remains one of the most dramatic and heartbreaking stories in medical history. A young man lost almost all control over his body at a very early age. Yet, even after his death, he continued to help science move forward. Harry himself never found a cure. But perhaps, because of his sacrifice, future generations might.